What up, everybody? Welcome to another coffee hour with Paul. We made it. You made it. You got here. You're at the end of the week. You put in the hard work. You put in what it takes to be successful. I know you do every day of the week. And you're here. For all those out there that have been preparing for the electrical exams, wishing you all, hopefully you nailed those exams. If not, you know we're here for you. We'll help you get there. But again, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking their time out of the week to join me here on Coffee Hour. I know it, you have to get up early. Some of you out there on the West Coast are up really early, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us for Coffee Hour to get your kind of your day going and talk about just about anything you want in the industry. And so, yeah, it's been a good week for us here. Hopefully it's been a good week for you. We've covered at this point the single-family dwelling applications, the very basic understanding of single-family dwellings. We've been covering that all of this week from Tuesday on today, which is the fourth edition today. So we're going to wrap it up today. So whatever it takes to wrap it up. As always, I want you to give me your name, tell me where you're from, give us a shout out, let us know if you're a fast track student, let us know what you got going on, where you're at, and we loved it and we'll share it. Because I love to live vicariously through all of the students and all of the people that join me on the show. So go on and do me a favor, do that. And if you've never joined us before, this is your first time ever joining us on Coffee Hour. It's not specifically designed for exam prep. So we're not just doing exam prep. We can cover any gamut of a conversation about just about any topic that's out there. In fact, next week, starting on Monday, I will be talking about artificial intelligence for the construction industry and how it can benefit. So we'll do our exam prep questions, a couple, but again, the topic is going to be not just about TradeHog, which is right there, by the way, but about how artificial intelligence is changing. And I'll be speaking across the country at different venues, talking about interacting with AI and how it can help municipal applications and automation, but also really it's about really report generation and how to get information quicker so that you can make informed decisions that are fair for everybody, fair for the AHJs, fair for the contractors. It's just a all around fair for everybody. That's the whole goal of artificial intelligence. It's not to replace the tradesmen. It's not to replace any of that. It's to enhance it and make your job just a little bit easier, that type of thing. So that's next week's agenda. We'll be talking about that. Of course, we still be doing some exam prep type of stuff. And then the week after that, we'll get back into a 4-part series on the optional method for calculating a dwelling. So we'll get into that little lesson type scenario. But before I get started, though, I want to make sure I give some shout outs to folks that have joined me today. And remember, you can always do #win in the chat wherever you're watching from, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, over on our Fast Tracks Tube, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching, make sure you do that #win, and you can get in on the spin. So, hey, Frank, thanks for joining. Happy Friday. Also, I should shout out to everybody out there, all the women out there. Happy Valentine's Day. I don't need to say it to the dudes because, that's be a little awkward. But I like to say it to the women out there. Happy Valentine's Day. And welcome. And thanks for allowing your husband to join us here in the morning. If you're here, it is Valentine's Day. Anyway, there we go. Frank said, remember to give at least any flowers to your wife. Yeah. Every time I give flowers to my wife, she always goes, they're going to die. So why don't you just give me a plant and I can plant it? That'd typically be my wife. But after, nearly 40 years of marriage, that's what I get. What is up, Terrence? Great. Thanks for joining me here this morning. Nepo, thanks for joining us. Good morning. What are they doing up in Philadelphia? They're having a parade today. They did pretty good, didn't they, last weekend? Even though the halftime shows seemed like everybody didn't like it, it seems like they did something good. So they're going to have a little parade up there, I think. People are calling in sick for some reason. I don't know. All of a sudden, they got sick. Good morning, Eric from California. Early out in California. Nepo shows us how to do it. #win to get in on the spin. And Eric said, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you too, sir. Thanks for joining us. Charles is getting in on the #win. Good morning, David. Thanks for joining me. Happy Friday. We made it. We made it to the end of the week. Let's see. Christopher, good morning. Thanks for joining. Glad to have you here. Rob over on Fast Tracks Tubes watching from Iowa. Good morning. Thanks for joining. I see you in here, Mike. Get the hashtag win. Edgar, good morning, my friend. Glad to have you here this morning. Guys, feel free to let me know who you are, where you're from, what you got going on today. Are you chilling for the Friday? Taking it easy for the rest of the week? Till the weekend, kind of slide right into the weekend instead of doing something there. Paul, good morning down in Houston. Thanks for joining me. Jay, I see you in here. It's Beatbox Friday. No, it's not, Paul. Manny, I don't know if I got the energy for a beatbox today. Morning, Manny. I made it to the end of the week, but I tell you what, it's been a long week. We're dragging, that type of thing. Tyler, thanks for joining us. Cold, wet Friday, full of learning. Hashtag win. There you go, Tyler. There you go. Thanks for joining us. Outdoor Man is in the house. Good morning, everybody. I got my second master's license yesterday, passed the G16 master's exam. Praise the Lord. Thanks, Paul. You are most welcome. Congratulations. I can give you one of these. Passing an electrical exam is always gangster. That's what I'm talking about. Good morning, Jay. Thanks for joining us as well. All right, we got a lot to cover today. Again, just congratulations out there to anybody, outdoorman. Congratulations for stacking up them licenses. So we're going to get into today's lesson is part 4. So now we're looking at we kind of recap what we've done up to this point. Right? Just so for those that missed it, we did the day 1. We did the 3 VA per square foot. And we had our specific dwelling that we're using as our example. We did that. We took out the open porch because the code says to do that. We did all that. We came up with our value. We applied our small appliances. I think we had 4, so that was like 6,000 VA. And then we had 2 laundries, 3,000 VA, 1,500 VA each. We applied those, right? All that in 220.52 for the VAs, for the laundry and that type of thing, and the small appliances. We did all that. And then we applied some demand factors, and we applied 220.45 if you're the 2023 NEC, and we're always going to be in the latest edition, by the way. So if you ever wonder, is this 2020 or is this 2817? We're always going to be working out of the 2023 because I always have to stay on the latest edition. I have to always keep moving forward, even though I know that some states may be lagging behind. I always have to move forward with the content. But again, you should be at this point. You've watched enough of our coffee hours. You're either a student in our program, whatever. You know how to adapt, okay, and move through the code and realize that maybe some of the numbers have changed. I do get that question a lot about exam prep. Can somebody take a 2023 exam using a 2020 NEC? I don't advise it because there's enough changes. I recommend you invest in your future. So if you're going to be testing on 2023 NEC and you happen to have a 2020 NEC, you need to upgrade. Go on and get you the 2023. It's a wise investment. People ask me, where do I recommend you purchase it? I always recommend you purchase straight from the source, NFPA. That way you don't get any counterfeits, and that's pretty rampant over on eBay and Amazon, where you might get an edition. The price looks too good to be true, and you think to yourself, wow, that's $30, $40, $50 cheaper than NFPA. There's usually a reason for that. Okay, I'm just saying, even if they throw in a bunch of extra bundles, tabs and there's usually a fluff in there that usually means that it's counterfeit. And I can tell you from experience, I have a lot of people that call me that get counterfeits. So just be careful, that type of thing. With that said, you make sure you invest in your future. Always have a current code. But now once you're licensed, then you can get Link and keep it on your phone. You obviously can work from an electronic version if you want. And it's also, you can get our mobile app and you can get a lot of calculators and you don't have to redo all that stuff. You just don't have to. I'd still rather you be smart and learn how to do all the calcs. But once you're licensed, again, I guess you can use a calculator if you want, the ones that already do all the math for you, or you could use TradeHawk. They'll do the math for you. But I like to keep you sharp. Okay. So anyway, we did that on the first day. Then the second day, we got the appliances all figured out. So go back and watch that video if you missed it, if you're new and you just stumbled in here and you didn't see the part 2. It'll be labeled part 2 over on our YouTube channel, which is Master the NEC. By the way, Master the NEC is our username on all of our platforms. If you see anything posted other than that, it's not us. So immediately just assume that it's somebody just spoofing, or it's always going to be Master the NEC, except on LinkedIn, where it's my own personal name, that type of thing. So, because that's a business platform. So anyway, we covered the appliances, got that out of the way. And then we covered dryers, okay, 220.54. And we were doing standard method. So again, the reason we need to do the standard methods because that helps us size the neutral. And we did that along the way. And then yesterday we covered the ranges, and we talked about ranges and cooktops and ovens. And we only got as deep as the dwelling that we're designing. Okay. Can you get deeper on ranges? Absolutely, you can. And we do have a video that is actually 2 videos over on Fast Tracks Tube that I encourage you to go watch if you're a subscriber. And that is, or if you've won a free account on here, that we do one that talks about the service and feeder calculation for ranges. And then there's another one that talks about the branch circuit requirements, right? In 210 for it comes to ranges. And so there's kind of 2 different things going on. But we also cover all those in our videos over on Fast Tracks Tube. Okay, they're not available on our YouTube channel, so make sure you check that out. If you're a subscriber, we appreciate you. And if you don't win a free subscription to Fast Tracks Tube, you still can use our discount coupon, which is a 50% off for your first annual subscription, and that is 50 OFF, 50 OFF. So if you don't want to risk winning here and you want to go get the subscription, you can use that coupon, save yourself approximately $50, right, for the subscription. I'm always trying to do what I can to give coupons out for things like that, so check it out. Okay, I'm not going to pop anything on the screen, just go check it out. Okay, all right, so now we worked our way up to, and we put our list together, and we worked our way up to the heating and air conditioning. Now, what's unique about the standard method is that under part 3, you're going to be looking at what's called, in our case, we have heat and we have air conditioning. And in our heat, it says just electric heat, 3 banks of heat, 5 kW each. That's what is our example, and we'll look at it. But that is built into the air handler unit. So they are, in those scenarios, they're running, and so we're taking that value obviously at 100%. Each one. So that'd be 15,000 kW or 15 kW, 15,000 watts. We're taking that in full value. But you also got to remember that you have an air handler unit typically for these setups, and that's going to blow all the air through the building. So when we talk about heat and air conditioning in a dwelling calculation, when we mention something called non-coincident loads, what are we meaning? Well, non-coincident loads means that a load that's going to not run at the same time as another load. Now, this doesn't just apply to dwellings. I mean, this can apply to any building, commercial buildings, anywhere. This could apply whereas I have maybe a feeder running to something, and there's some type of interlock that one thing can't run while the other one's running. So as long as I size it to the larger one, the conductors to the feeders or everything to the larger one, it doesn't matter if the larger one's not running and the smaller one's running, the conductors were sized to the larger one. Okay, so I'm able to say, well, you know what? If these 2 loads can't run at the same time, then I only have to account for the largest load, and I'll size everything for the largest load. Who cares about the lesser load? Because when it's running, I sized everything to the larger of the 2 non-coincident loads. You get what I'm saying? So that's how it works. It's a non-coincident load thing. Now, when it comes to a dwelling, probably the only thing in a dwelling that we'll encounter that we would say is a non-coincident load is a thermostatically controlled separation between the heat and the AC through thermostatic control. Now, if you have a heat pump, for example, it's not the same because you could have the defroster that could come on as well as, so there really would not be, you have to treat heat pumps a little differently. But in our situation, it's our example, it's a flat out central heating system and a separate air conditioning system. So they're interlocked in a thermostatic controlled environment. And so when the heat's running, the AC's not running. When the AC's running, the heat's not running. So we have to, in a dwelling, we're going to be comparing those. And for exams, that's just typically how they'll give it to you. Because unless they say that they're not non-coincident loads, means that they're both could be running at the same time, then you have to account for both of them, okay? So 220.60 in the National Electrical Code accounts for what's called non-coincident loading, all right? So that's kind of a really high view of it. So in our case, the AC versus heat. That's what we would use in our example. Now, a couple things before we look at it is the air handler unit, obviously, in our example, if it's blowing through the house, it's obviously going to be, if it's central heat, it's obviously going to be blowing through the house regardless of whether the AC is running or the heat's running. So the air handler is not considered a non-coincident load because it's going to be regardless of which is going on. So whether it's the heat or the AC, the air handler is still going to be pumping that air, the blower motor, still pumping that air. So that's important to remember that the air handler has to be added to both the heat as well as the AC, right? Because it is not a component that is non-coincidental, right? So, and then remember the heat, again, in accordance with 220.51 of the NEC, is considered, okay, 100% of the total connected load, okay? In this case, we had 3 banks of 5 kW. So let's look real quick at the material, and we'll skip there, but I just want to look and make sure we recap. And I just want to do a few more shout outs here this morning. Cray, what's up from Tennessee? Let's see here. We've got John's in the house. Thanks, John. Welcome. We have Dan Martins is in the house. Finally, Dan got here. There you go. Let's see here. Paul asks, in the future, can we do an episode showing formulas for voltage drop, power factor, and so on? Absolutely, we can do that. I will put together something and we'll do a presentation on that. Pretty easy. Pretty easy for voltage drop. A lot of people get confused with voltage drop. Power factor is also an easy equation. So we'll look at all that type of stuff. Maybe we'll do a contractor basic Ohm's law, basic math episode one morning. We'll do that. How about that? We'll get into that. That works for me. What's up, Tino? Thanks for joining. Okay. And James says he's been using NFPA Link in his classrooms a lot. Absolutely. Yeah. NFPA Link is what we use here. It's amazing. Not really good for people preparing for an electrical exam, though, because you can't obviously use that, but still, great tool. All right, let's get to the lesson real quick. So, so here we are. We've already done all of this stuff in our lesson. We're all the way down now to this right here. And in our case, it's electric heat, 3 banks, 5 each. Basically, these in parentheses let you know that this is integral into the actual central heating system. So this is 15 kW. It's 3 banks of how they're installed. Basically 15 kW heat strips in here. Strip plural, 3 5 kW that probably my brother likes to disconnect these because he's in a region where he thinks the 15 kW is overkill for where he's at. In other words, if he's doing generators or starting and stuff, he likes to reduce it down. So, but anyway, this one has 3 banks of 5. And then, of course, you have your air handler. We have our air conditioning compressor, and we have our condensing fan. The condensing fan is what's on top of the outdoor air conditioning compressor. Now, one thing I will tell you is this one did make it easy for everybody because all of the motors here were given in their amp value for the exam purposes. And so no horsepower given. It just flat out gave you the amps. So it's kind of an easy step for us because you'll all know in order to get in here kind of Paul to a math thing is that all we have to do is do the amps times the volts to get our VA, right? So volts times amps, watts is synonymous with VA. So we're going to do that in a second. So these are already done for us. Now, I just want to remind folks that if you're on an exam, just for those that are taking an exam, they might not be given this way. They may give you the horsepower and the volts. And then you know that you've got to do what? You just got to go to motors and you're going to go to 430.248, which is probably dealing in single phase right here. Not to forget, somebody asked the other day, if it is three-phase loads, you're going to be in 430.250. But in this scenario, since we're a single-family dwelling, we would be going to 430.248, and we would find the horsepower. Then we'd find the FLC. Once we find the FLC, then we multiply that by the volts that are given in the question, okay? Not what's on the table, in the question, and that's how we're going to get the VA. And that's what we're going to use in our calculation. But in our case, it was already done for us, so it made it just a tad bit easier for us here in this scenario because they've just given this value. So I'm assuming you're going to go, and one of the first things that you do on any exam, or the first thing you should do on any calculation, is do your amps times your volts and get your values. So we'll see that in a second. But while I've got y'all here on the screen so that you can see the values, I'll do 3.2 times 115. Yes, you use the 115. You do not assume 120 just because other values in here have been given as 120. Okay, you're going to use what you're given. Okay, so that is 368. So that's 368 VA for this air handler. This air conditioning compressor, they did the math for us, or at least gave us the amps. So we're going to use what they give us, 16.6 times, and never trust my math, do it yourself. We're going to be using 230 because that's what the question gives us. Even though we know that it's 240 nominal, we're using what they give us in the question. Okay. So in this case, it is 3,818 VA for the air conditioning compressor, just pure value based on the calculation. And then, of course, the condensing fan, it would be 2 times 115. Okay, so that's 230. Okay. So we have all of our values here, so we can go on and go and see how we would apply this. Okay. So in terms, that was what we did now. So now we just get to the skip to, here we go. Okay, so in our case, this is what we're looking at right here. So the smaller of the two or more, non-coincident loads can be omitted as long as they are never energized simultaneously as stated in 220.60. Okay, we kind of just talked about it. And people say, let me see that. I will. I'll take you here. It's right here. Okay, and it says, if it is unlikely that two or more coincident loads will be used simultaneously using only the largest load of the items that will be simultaneously used that will be used at one time for calculating the total load of a feeder or service shall be permitted. Okay. So for us, it's a permissive rule. If you want to add up all of the loads and do it, and if you're those engineers who say, well, I don't want to take the chance, or I can't ensure 100% of non-coincident abilities, then maybe you size everything to 100%, but never for an exam, okay? So there's a reason they ask you a question on an exam or dealing with it. Now, in the real world, you have to do your due diligence. You have to determine whether something is truly a non-coincidental load, whether there is some type of interlock that prevents one thing from running when something else is running if they're being supplied by the same, let's say feeder. You'll have to determine that. And that's how we determine that in the overall service. If I look at it and go, is this going to be running, but another load cannot run at the same time as this load? This load is greater than this load, but this lesser load can never run at the same time this one's running. If that's what you're evaluating, then you're able to discount or remove the lesser of the two because you're going to be taken care of by going with the largest load. Now, I've said that 2 or 3 times, and so it's a bit redundant, but I'm a redundant educator. That's how I teach. And so I try to hammer home redundancy in many aspects of my training, okay? So let's get back to the lesson here. All right, so that's where we're at. So we kind of already did this math a minute ago, but let's go with the first one. So let's compare the heat. So we know that this heat, and again, in accordance with 220.51 in the code, and again, let's go look at it. Here's 220.51. Let me get you there. Bear with me here. Here we go. So the fixed heat portion, okay, says fixed heat space heating shall be calculated at 100% of the total connected load, okay? So that's the part we're keying on right here, okay? So that's how we're at the 100% for that fixed load, okay? That's how we're there with that. So So that's 15. So we have the 15, but now we have to realize that it's not just the heat, that we also have the blower motor that's going to blow that heat around the building, right? So we have to add that in. So we already did the math here earlier. 3.2 times 115, that's 368 VA. So since the loads are going to be operating at the same time, obviously the air handler is going to be running at the same time that the heat's going to be running, then we have to add the two together. So we'll take the 15 plus we'll add the 368 to it. So the heating contribution here is 15,368. Now, many of you that are already used to doing this, that you've done load calcs before, or that are very savvy at this, already look at this and go, well, I don't even have to look at the AC, right? I don't even have to look at it because I know that the heat is going to be greater than the AC. But what I need to do is to show you, because it may not be. This one's pretty easy, but it may not be. So you have to go through this exercise of comparison. And this also causes quite a bit of confusion to people when it comes to how do you apply a non-coincident load calculation when it comes to two loads that are non-coincidental, like heat versus AC that are thermostatically separated. All right, so if that's the case, then we have to look at it and say, okay, well, let's go to the NEC, okay? They worded that terribly well. We've tried to change it for years, but I'm gonna try to lay this out, James, and make it a little easier for people to understand, hopefully. Okay. So let's go down real quickly and look at 220.60. And I've argued that it is poorly worded. It's been poorly worded for years. But we're gonna do our best to try to dissect this out for folks. So this is the first part of this. And remember, this first part, I wish they'd put this in itemized bullets to make it stand out. But this first part is basically just telling us the where we get the permission to choose the larger of the two non-coincidental loads, two loads that can't operate at the same time. So that's that wording. Now, when we identify this, we then need to separate in our brain, left hemisphere versus right hemisphere. We need to move this out of the equation. And then totally, once we establish that, then we focus on this portion. And this portion has evolved over the last couple years, right? So in this case, it says if a motor or air conditioning load is part of the non-coincident load that is not the largest of the non-coincident loads, then you do 125% of the motor load or air conditioning load, whichever is larger, shall be used in the calculation. Okay, so this opens it up, for example, to be if you're not just dealing with AC versus heat. This is for all applications, all motors, those type of things where you do a non-coincident load. So in our case, it says, okay, look, you basically have to compare the heat load, if these are non-coincident loads, you compare the heat to the air conditioning load, okay? Now, in comparing the two, you have to say, okay, which one is the larger? Well, in our case, the heat was larger. But of the non-coincident loads, the lesser one, which was the AC, does that have the largest motor, or the, in this case, the hermetic refrigerant motor is considered the motor, is the largest. Is that the largest motor in the dwelling? Or the largest motor when we're doing this comparison? And the answer to that is yes. In our case, it is. That was 3,818 VA. And it is more than anything else. So that is the largest. And it is part of the lesser. It's part of the one that wasn't the largest, because the heat was the largest. Okay. And we're comparing AC to heat. So in the language of the code, looking at it again, it says if a motor or air conditioning load is part of the non-coincident load that is not the largest, and our AC calculation, it was the largest motor in the building, but it is also the lesser of the two. Okay, so it qualifies. It says if that's the case, go on and take the motor load or air conditioning load, whichever is larger, and use it at 125% to do the calculation. All right? Okay, so it says percent of the motor load or air conditioning load, okay? And largest. So in our case, the largest motor, it just happens to be part of the air conditioning load, was the air conditioning compressor. That was our largest. Okay. All right, so we're back here at the lesson. So when we look at it that way, the air handler blows with either, so that's included in both, and added to both calculations. We at least we added to the heat, so we know what the heat is. That's this right here. So now we know the air conditioner is the lesser of the two, and it does contain the largest motor, okay? All right? So in this case, we take that 16.6 amps times 230. That's where we got the 3,800. So you say, is this specific for feeders? No, this isn't specific for feeders. It's specific, when you're doing the load calculation, it's specific to feeders and service. Saying it says the first part is that gives you the golden rule, okay? Right? And it says to use the when you're doing the non-coincidental loads, it's for feeder and service calculations permitted, okay? Down here, there's nothing in here that limits it to feeder only, okay? So we're doing a service calculation, so that's why this is applicable to the overall service calculation. It's not just to a feeder, okay? All right, back to the lesson. All right, so in this case, you have 16.6 amps times 230. That's where we got the 3,818. But since it is the largest motor, it is the largest of the two coincidental loads. It is the largest of the non-coincident motor. So we take it at 125%, which is 4,772.5. We can either round that up now or do it at the end. It doesn't matter. But we'll round it up and we'll say it's 4,773. Then it's the sum of the other two contributing loads. Okay, so then you add the 230, which is the 2 amps here, times 115, that's 230. And then, of course, that air handler, which again is going to be running regardless. So that is the 368. So you add the 4,773, 230, and 368. That is going to be 5,371 VA. Okay, so that is your air conditioning load. Again, we compared the two. The heat was still so much larger. So it's clear in our case that the heat is going to win. But I do think it's important that we did the little exercise because it may not be a situation where you have that scenario, right? And you might have a situation where you have no non-coincident loads at all, right? You might have baseboard heat and you might have air conditioning. Maybe you have a central air conditioning system. Well, if that's the case, then 220.60 is not going to apply to you. So this is just, if it is applicable, then it applies. If it's not applicable, you ignore it. You don't have anything to do with it. But you still have to account for those loads, by the way. You can't just say, oops, I'm going to forget something. So I think it's extremely important to understand. And could they do a better job at explaining this? I do think they could. Now, one of the things that I like to explain to people when they talk about this right here, why do they get this 125%? All right, so it also harkens back to 220.50, by the way, right here, for motors and air conditioners. Now, you see, for whether or not you're dealing with air conditioning equipment or you're dealing with a motor, okay? Either way, when you go look at those, they're going to be talking about taking the largest motor at 125%. If you have multiple motors, they're going to be talking about taking the largest motor at 125% and the sum of all the other motors at 100%. So in our case, we're already taking care of that. We would have taken care of that if that additional 25%, which is we're going to see in a second, had been the AC had been larger than the heat. Then since we already took it at 125%, if the AC had have won, then we would have already had that largest motor. We would have already had that 25% figured in. But since it wasn't figured in because we took the heat instead of the AC, we still have to account for the largest motor because we still have to apply 220.50 for the motors that are in this building. Okay? We still have to meet that application. You can't ignore 220.50. All right? I'm just showing you that sometimes that might get absorbed into the calculation when you're doing non-coincident heat versus AC, because if the AC incorporates that additional 25% in its largest motor, then it might push it above the heat. If it did, then that 25% has already been captured and you wouldn't need to apply 220.50. You don't have to do it twice. Remember, this 220.50 is just taking the largest motor at 125%. Well, you've taken every motor in the building already at 100%. So all we're trying to do is capture that additional 25%. Well, if we got it when we did the heat versus AC, then we don't have to do it again. But in our case, we didn't do that because the heat won. So all of the AC loads gets discounted. It gets removed, right? Because of that non-coincident, right? Remember, if we're sizing for the heat, what does it matter if the AC is running? Because that was a third of what the heat load was. So we get to forget about it. It's gone. We're just going with the heat. That does not remove us from the largest motor requirement, and that is 220.50. We could have taken care of it if the AC had a 1, since we did that at 125. We could have captured killed two birds with one stone, but we can't because we didn't get to use the AC. So we still had that largest motor out there lingering that we got to take care of, okay? So let's get back to the lesson real quick. All right, so anyway, as far as we're concerned, the heat is what's going to be added to our calculation. Now, by the way, just a little tip about heat pumps. If you have a heat pump with supplementary heat, now this is covered very easily over in the optional method, but when it's not the optional method, we're in the standard method. If you have a heat pump with supplemental heat, it's not considered to be a non-coincident load. And by the way, if I've accidentally said non-continuous anywhere, I apologize. It's Friday. We're talking about non-coincident loads. Okay, two loads that won't operate simultaneously. If that's the case, you add the compressor's full load current to the maximum amount of heat that can be energized while the compressor is running. Remember to include all associated motors, blowers, condensing fans, and everything that would be associated with the heat pump. So if you have separate heat, a supplemental heat, you take that value, and if you have whatever the value is on the nameplate for the full load current of the nameplate on the compressor or the heat pump unit, add that together, and they're not non-coincidental loads. So they could be running, that heat could be running at the same time, maybe in a defrost mode. So they're not treated as a non-coincident load. Okay. Now, in the optional method, which we'll see in a couple weeks, in the optional method, you have something that allows you to reduce some of the heating loads and be able to account for that in the optional method, but you don't have that option in the standard method. So again, that's why the standard method typically is going to result in a larger service, okay? Just overall. Make sense? All right, so let's go on and let's get to the next. So we've done everything up to this point. But what we have not done is we have not accounted for that largest motor yet. And again, that's covered in 220.50. We almost could have got it taken care of in 220.60, but our AC wasn't big enough, so the heat won, so we still have to find the largest motor. Now, here's where people get confused. We have now thrown out the AC. It's gone. It's not in our equation anymore. We have to now look for the next largest motor in this dwelling because we've already thrown out the AC. We've eclipsed it with the heat. So we're searching for the next largest motor. All right, so the largest motor usually is the air conditioning compressor, and based on 220.50 and the reference of 440.6, it would be used to get the 25%. However, in the case in our calculation, the air conditioning load has been omitted, so we're looking for the second largest motor. Now, let me tell you something real quick in the scheme of life, in the real world. In the real world, don't sweat this because the value of that 25% is so small that it's not going to make a difference. Okay, so if you want to go use the air compressor motor again as the largest motor and factor it in, all you're trying to capture is that 25%. That's it. Okay, don't overthink this. All right, in the scheme of life, it's not going to make that big of a difference. It's a small amount of VA. But on an exam, read the question carefully because it might be crafted in a way that it would push you to a larger conductor or just to a larger size. So just be cognizant of that when you're doing it, whether you're preparing for an exam or not. But don't let that rattle around in your head. I don't want to get emails from people saying, Paul, give me a scenario when this would happen. I can't tell you. I'm just saying, as a person that writes exam questions, I might write a question that just puts you on the cusp of bumping you up to a different size service using the standard method based on that scenario. Okay. All right. So in our case, our other appliances that we had or other motors, I shouldn't say appliances, or other motors we had, because we want to use pure motors here. We're not going to use appliances like a dishwasher, that type of thing, okay? That's a unitary equipment. It's typically not rated in horsepower, so we're not looking for that motor. We're looking for the others. So we have an in-sink waste disposer that was a 0.5 horsepower. We're looking at the trash compactor, okay? And in that scenario, it's 7.5 amps times that. And we had our 3 attic fans. Now, the thing about a trash compactor, it's a single function, means it's a simple function of crushing. So it's a motor that pushes a crush. So that's why we're using it in our example. Whereas why we wouldn't use a dishwasher is because it has separate features. And so we treat it as an appliance. Although in our case, it's going to be moot because the dishwasher wouldn't have outweighed the largest motor here anyway, that type of thing. So, all right, so in this scenario right here, we're comparing them. Now, the 3 attic fans, again, we're only dealing with the 1 motor, not all 3. So one was 4.2 amps at times 120 volts is 504. We're not using that one. Trash compactor, 7.5 amps times 120. It's a 900 VA. And then, of course, the in-sink waste disposer, 0.5 horsepower, which if you go to 430.248, it's going to be 9.8 amps. Go check that out. Times 115, that's what was given us an example. And I'll show you back here, right? So this is what our example back here would be, okay? Now, there are some jurisdictions that may say, when it's looking for the largest motor, it might say. So what we're looking for is a trash compactor, for example, is a motor-driven compressive unit. Whereas some jurisdictions may say, we want you to consider the dishwasher, okay? Because it has a motor on there that turns it. That's typically not how the dishwashers are rated, so that's not why we do that. But typically on a trash compactor, we're giving you the amps, but usually it'll have a HP marking on there for the motor that does the compression or the compaction, that type of thing. So don't let it get in your head. We're just using numbers here to do this. I'm going to show you how those values are not going to make a huge difference for you, but you still need to understand 220.50 and how you would apply this. Now, in our scenario, and again, this all stems from its reference to 430.24, which is motors. So since we have multiple motors here, the rules in 430.24, if you go look at it, say take the largest motor at 125% and the sum of the other motors at 100%. So all we're doing is looking. We've already taken these in our current calculation. We did this in day 2. We've already taken these things at that value. We're just trying to capture that additional 25%. That's all right? So in our case, of these, the largest in our example here, we're going to go with the waste disposer. And that was 9.8 amperes times 115 volts. It is 1,127. Okay. And if you had done the dishwasher because you felt like that happens to be a motor, I would disagree. But if you did, it's not going to be that much difference in your equation. You're going to be 10 amps at 120. And what is that? Just by the way, 10 times 120, and that is 1,200. So again, you're talking a minuscule amount of amps, okay, difference. I mean, VA, difference, very small amount. It's not going to make a difference in your overall math. So don't sweat this one, but just in the field, if you forget the largest motor application in 220.50, it's okay. It'll be all right. On an exam, just be cognizant of what they give you in the exam, right? So in this case, 1,127 times 25%, it's just 281.75. So it's just the 282 VA is that additional 25% for the largest motor in the dwelling. And the reason we didn't use AC is because we did the comparison and we got rid of everything associated with the AC. Okay? And I also should remind you that this also is applicable when it comes to the neutral calculation. Only difference here is with the neutral, when you're sizing the neutral conductor, the only difference here is when it does the AC versus heat type of thing, when you're doing the neutral calc, it doesn't matter about AC versus heat. At that point, you're simply taking all the neutral loads. So that air compressor, the air condenser, the compressor, those were, the air compressor, hold on here. Hermetic refrigerant motor. Let me make sure I make this point. This right here, is going to be in your neutral load, okay, the 3.2. So that 368 is in your neutral load. And the condensing fan will be in your neutral load calculation, okay? But the air compressor will not, because that's a 230 volt application. So that does not have a neutral load contribution, okay? And then as far as the heat, none of that would be in your neutral calculation because that's 240 volts, okay? So you just add that out. But what is important is you're just adding these values in your load calculation for the neutral. But what I think is important is that when you get to the largest motor, this scenario, you still have to account for that 25% even when you're doing the neutral. The only difference is you're only going to be looking at the loads that will have a neutral contribution. Okay, that's it. And in our case, all of these have a neutral contribution. All right. Now, the other question that people say was, well, why didn't you use the right here? Why didn't you use the compressor here in the largest motor? Because remember, we got rid of it due to the heat versus AC process. Okay, makes sense. It's redundant, but I want to make sure that we're clear on all that. Why we got the numbers that we got. All right, so if you remember, we're pulling back to what we did when we started this whole mess back on Tuesday. We had the value for the general lighting and general loads value. We had the value for the fastened in place, okay, and we had 4 or more. So we had already applied a demand factor to that. We had the clothes dryer. We had the cooking appliance. We had the heat versus AC. In our case, you see the heat 1. We omitted the AC, and we had that largest motor. In our case, was 282 VA, and you simply add it all up. So I'm going to double check myself here just because I like to double check. You never know. You can do it too if you have a calculator. I'll do it for you. So here, and let's see. Oop, forgot one here. Okay. All right. So hold on here. I think I've messed up something here. 7,048. Hold on with me, guys. Let me do it. 6,929. 5,500. 8,450. Plus 15,368. Bear with me, guys. Okay. Plus 282. Forgot to add 282. Okay. So this is what you should be getting. Just what you see on the screen right there. So 43,577 VA. Okay. That is our total load after we applied everything. Now we simply just take that, multiply that by 240, and you get 181.57. Of course, 0.5, we're dealing in amps, so we're allowed in 220.5B to move that to 182, and that is our rounding, okay? So if that's the case, now we have to remember that, okay, so I have to have overcurrent protection. Now, overcurrent protection, does it correspond with 182? Well, if we go to 240.6A and we look at these standard ratings, and we look down and we say, well, we don't have one at 182, but we have a 200. So I am perfectly okay to have a 200 amp rated service, okay? Now, this is where we get into a lot of questions on exams, and they go, well, if the question about the exam is the best possible, so we know the question on exam is a 200 amp rated service. Now the question becomes, when can I apply the 83% rule? Now, in the real world, if you want to size everything to the 200 amps and you want to go to 310/16 and size everything, that's fine. You can do it if you want. Nothing prohibits you from doing that. That's totally your choice to do that. However, on an exam and in the real world personally, it's always the issue of wanting to find the best possible answer. And so you finding the best possible answer means that we're going to go and we're going to use 310.12, all right? And so in 310.12a for the services, 310.12b is for the feeder, okay? And I have a total video separate on this that explains the application of 310.12, the 83% rule, and things like that. But it's basically 83%. The conductors have to be at least 83% of the rating of the service or feeder, and that's going to be based on the overcurrent device, okay? And so 83% of a 200 amp is what we're looking for in this case. for the minimum, the conductors have to be, service conductors have to be at least this size. At least. Can it be larger? Absolutely. They got to be at least this size. Okay. Now, you could just go to the EDC and use the table because there is a table there now for that. Came a cycle ago. It came back in a couple cycles ago. But I prefer you just to do the math, to be honest with you. So in this case, if you look at 310.12, it says, and we'll go look at that really quick. And yes, we're going to do some giveaways here at the end, folks. So if you're in here for the spin, we'll be doing it here shortly. I wanted to just make sure I get this full lesson done. I don't want to drag it on to another day. Okay, so in this case, 310.12, we'll look at it right here. So this is a one family dwelling. That's what we're doing, but it's also good for individual dwelling units to two family dwellings. Okay, that type of thing. So, and it is also good, applicable to multifamily dwellings. Okay, so in our case, we're doing the service. So we have to make sure we check all the boxes, right? So is it based on our calculation, is it over rated 100 amps through 400? Absolutely. Okay. Is this panel or this panel service we're sizing handling 100% of the loads for this dwelling? Absolutely it is. Okay. And so again, it says that it shall be permitted to have an ampacity. These are the conductors again. Not less than 83%. Again, not less than, can be more than, but not less than 83% of the service rating. Okay? And if there's no adjustment or corrections, means you don't have any ambient temperature other than 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I know you all look at that when you're doing your services. Womp, womp, womp. But anyway, and if you have not more than 3 current conductors, which you probably won't for a single family dwelling, then you can apply this table. And then you have to do nothing. So all I would do here is say, okay, it's a 200 amp rating. That's what we determined it was. Then it's 2-aught copper, 4-aught aluminum. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now, where it becomes dicey, right, is if you do have to do an adjustment or correction. Then you're going to do an adjustment or correction just like we always would do it. You would basically have to determine what I need for an ampacity. So for example, if I did 200, which is the marking on the breaker, right? And I'm multiplying that times 0.83, that is 166 amps. So after adjustment and corrective purposes, I have to make sure that I still have a conductor that's good for 166 if I want to use the 83%. So I would do it just like I would do any other adjustment or correction. Means that I would take the value that I need, which is 166, and I would divide that by, okay, I would divide that by whatever modifier I have, whether it's using 310.15C1 for the number of current conductors, which you probably won't use. It usually is going to be one that is done in 310.15B11, and that is where the ambient temperature deviates from the norm ampacities from 310.16, which is 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, if you're up in the north, right, then you know that you really are going to deviate from the 30 degrees Celsius and 86 degrees Fahrenheit. But how many of you actually figure that in? On an exam, they got to give you this info, right? They got to give it to you. Otherwise, you don't know, right? So they have to tell you what the ambient is. And that should be a trigger for you that it's not simply something that you would just pull from the table, okay? If they're giving you ambient temperatures and they're telling you that's a certain value, and that should be triggered ding, 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 that you're going to have to do our normal calculation. And a way to find it would be to use the minimums, which is the 83%, which is 166, and division, you look up. Multiplication, you go down. So I would take the 166 divided by whatever my modifier might be, like 0.80, if it's 80%, 0.80. And then I would go look under the 90 degree column, if my conductors are rated 90, see what conductor can handle that, right? Because you're allowed to adjust and correct from the 90 as long as the conductors are insulated for 90, okay? And I'm allowed to adjust and correct for that. And the whole goal is that after all that, I need to make sure that my conductor is still rated for 166, which is 83% of the rating. So we cover that in a video that we do called Derating Demystified. right? And so that's one of those videos that I highly recommend that you go watch if you're confused by any of that, right? So anyway, here it is. We did the 200 by 83%. That's 166 amps. Then we select conductor under the 75. Now, why do we use the 75? Because we're not generally, when we're using this in that table, we're not doing any adjustment or corrections, right? So we follow the general rules in 110.14c is if it's over 100, we're going to the 75-degree column. We're not doing any adjustment or correction. And that's why that table, and I'm the one that submitted this years ago, that table under 310.12a is based on the 75-degree column, right? Because it starts at 100 amps. So it's at the 75-degree column. You don't get to use the 90 if you're just using the table. That's because there's no adjustment or correction purposes. So that's why if you're going to use it without using the table, it's 83% of the service rating. Then you go to the 75-degree column. You don't get the luxury of using the 90 unless you have adjustment or corrections that are taking place, and then the code permits you to do that as long as the conductors have an insulation that's rated 90. Again, if that's confusing here at the end of an hour, go watch my derating demystified video. It's probably one of the best videos that you'll ever watch when it comes to sizing conductors, adjustment and corrections, how to apply more than 3 current conductors. We even talk about the MC cables and bundling and all. A must watch for anybody, but it's over on Fast Track's tube. We removed it from YouTube, okay? All right, so anyway, again, in this case, it is a 2-aught copper or 4-aught aluminum would be the size for that. Now, when it comes to the neutral loads, again, the neutral loads were just simply a matter of us adding all of those values up in order to come to the neutral. So let me kind of give you an idea of what that is, just so we can end positively. Of our loads that we did today, these were the only things that were neutral. And remember, you do the same calculation for the neutral as you did for the standard. The only thing you're doing is you're leaving off anything that's 240 volt, okay? Right? So in these calculations for the neutral, all of these are neutral loads, right? So you keep the same value that you did in the first step we did on Tuesday. Same number. That doesn't change. Okay? Of the appliances, the only ones that you're going to use are the ones that have a neutral contribution. And by the way, if it's still 4 or more appliances, you most certainly still get to apply the 75% to it. Just because it's a neutral doesn't mean you don't get to. I used to say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So in this case, I just leave off the water heater because that's a 240 volt. So we're just leaving that appliance off. The next, when it comes to clothes dryers and the cooking, same thing applies here. We get the allowance in 220.61b, and we talked about this in the last episode. I take the value that we calculate out, and I get to multiply that, or what we say, do an additional demand of 70%. Where do we get that allowance? In 220.61b. So if I had to show you that, so that you kind of can quantify it. Again, we're doing the neutral right now. Under the standard method, if we go to that, we go right here, and you'll notice that it is still under the standard. It's not under the optional down here. It's still under part 3, and very important. So here's our neutral, right? And down here, we get permitted reductions, right? And in our case right here, the household cooking, and then of course clothes dryers, it says a feeder or service supplying household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and electric dryers. It says where the maximum unbalanced load has been determined, and it has been determined. We've already done the calculation. We know what that load is, okay? In accordance with table 220.55 and table 220.54. We have done that. So what is it allowing us? It says that an additional demand factor of 70% shall be applied, okay? So we're able to apply an additional 70. Now, when you say additional, Paul, people go, what do you mean additional? Well, we already applied demands, didn't we? When we had the dryers, we used 220.55 for the ranges, and we applied demands. For the dryers, we applied any demands where they were applicable. We've already done all that. So all this is saying, look, I'm going to let you take an additional do a 70% demand on the value that you calculated under the standard method. We're going to let you do that. So you just simply are doing what? You're doing a 70% multiplier. So in our case, that's what we did for the neutral. We took that 5,500, which is that dryer. 70% of that is 3,850. So we're reducing it 30. And then, of course, we had the values that we got from the cooking we did. We had 8.45 or 8,450 VA or watts. And again, we're going to apply 70% to that for the neutral. And that would be 5,915. People ask me all the time of this, well, what do you mean it's a 240 volt load to the dryer in the range? Well, obviously, you're running a 4-wire to that, right? So you know there's a neutral there. It's for the timer. It's for certain features that are on those appliances, cooking appliances or clothes dryers, like the timers and things like that, that need 120 volt. Maybe you open the door and a little light comes on, things like that. So there is neutral contribution. And so this is allowing you to gather that neutral contribution. And you have to add it in, right? So that's all we did with that. So those get accounted for. And of course, when we're doing the AC and heat, we get rid of, we don't do a comparison here. We don't have to worry about the heat because that's 240. There's no neutral. But that condenser fan is, and that air handler did, they both have neutral contributions. So there's no comparison, okay? You just simply will add those into the equation, right? So again, at the end of the day, you add both of these together. So that'd be 598. That is my neutral contribution, okay? Obviously, both of these are going to be running at the same time because that air handler is always going to be running, right? But the condenser fan is running only when the AC is running, but they both will be at the same time, and we're looking for neutral contributions. And so both of those contribute to the neutral. So again, the largest motor, last thing we need to do is find that largest motor. As you heard me say earlier, yes, you still have to do that when it comes to the neutral, but you're only looking for the largest motor that has a neutral contribution. So in our case, we looked at all these again, and it's the same value that we did before because the in-sink waste disposer is our largest neutral contribution for that scenario. Okay, so that's exactly the same. So when we're looking at our neutrals, these are all the values that we take. There's our 70% of our cooking appliances. There's our 70% of our dryer loads. Those are all of our fixed appliances that have 120. And we did get to apply the 75% to the original amount because we have 4 or more. We applied the same general lighting and general use and all the circuits here because they all have neutral contribution. They're all 120 volt circuits, so they're all neutral. And we compared we did the heating and air conditioning. We looked at those loads that run simultaneously. And then we looked for the largest motor. And then we just add this all up together. And I will do this just to make sure our math is right. So 7,048 plus 3,554 plus 3,850 plus 5,915 plus 598 plus 282. That's 21,247. That's what I've got. Hopefully that's what you got. And we divide that by 240, and that's 88.52 amps, or we're able to round this to 89 amps due to that 220.5 allowance. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be looking at, we have to go find a conductor in table 316 that's good for 89 amps. Okay, and the copper, it would be a 3, and it would be, for aluminum, it would be a 2. That'd be adequate for 89 amps, okay? Now, also one last note, even though we're going through this little cycle of math, right, and we pick the conductor because that's based on the calculated load for that neutral, it still cannot be smaller than what's given in 250.102C1, okay, for this situation. So what conductor size did we pick earlier, right, when it came to what? The ungrounded conductors. Remember what size we had? We had, let's go back real quick, right here. So in our case, it was, let's say copper. So it's 2-aught copper, okay? So the neutral can't be less than what's in 250.102C1, although we know what we need to have because we did a load calculation. But anyway, if we go to the NEC to make sure, double check us, because we know what the code says. It cannot be less, and that says that in 250.24. It can't be less. So we're going to go double check really quickly to make sure that we're not less. And let's go here. We're just double checking ourselves. And remember this table here. I'll pop it up. Remember, this is also for doing what? Sizing the grounded conductor, and it can't be less than this table. So in our case, our conductor, our ungrounded conductor for this service was based on what we did, 83% and all that, was a 2-aught copper. So we come down here, we're right here. All right, so the grounded conductor cannot be smaller than a 4. All right, so in our example that we did, right, that our example for our neutral conductor, we did, and we'll go back to the lesson. In ours, we had a 3. 3 is larger than a 4. Hoping you understand how American wire gauge works. 3 is larger, so obviously we're going to be sizing it based on the calculated neutral load versus the minimum requirements of 250102C1. But you see how that works. We just go and double check the table. That's all. All right? Okay, a lot of info in that episode today. I do want to give some stuff away. So let's go on, and hopefully you've done #win in here and that you can get in on the goodness. I've got the list here. Remember, the drawing is March 31st. I do want to be good stewards of your time, guys, so let me make sure I get all set up. I am a little bit over, but that was an awful lot to cover in the last episode. Hopefully you got it. Go back and watch it again on the replay if there's something at the end you didn't get. And so let's go on and do this here. Christopher MDE, let's spin the wheel, my friend. See what we got going on for you. By the way, if you're watching behind the scenes over on TikTok, you can always come to our live show every week. All right. So Christopher, you're in another drawing for that best bid estimating software, approximately a $4,000 value. So let me get you in on that. So you're in for that. You're in for the drawing. Again, around about March 31st, we'll have that drawing, and we'll get you in for that. Let's do another one here, folks. #win gets you in for the spin. Also bring some new sound effects on Monday, just so y'all know. Okay. Christopher, you get another spin, dude. Wow. Hit you again. Let's go. Boy, tell you what, Christopher, you're living. You better go play the lottery today, bro. You should go get a ticket. Go get a lotto ticket today. I'm just saying. Oh, you're also in the course bidding. That would be great if you won both that, because that bidding course teaches you how to estimate, how to bid, how to look at man hours. And it really, if you're not into estimating or you don't, it opens up the door for a career that you can move out of the field into the office and doing estimating and bidding, or maybe it's for your own. I highly recommend his course. It's like $500 for his course. But dude, the guy is amazing when it comes to understanding these things. He writes books on this subject. So hold on. So boy, that's kind of weird. That's kind of like, I don't know how that happened like that, Christopher. It's like it knows that it wants you to win that. So you'll be in the drawing for that. So yeah, Charles said it's rigged. Dude, how's it rigged? Always a troublemaker. Hold on. All right, let's do another one here. Again, long episode today. Again, I appreciate you folks. Hopefully you got something out of it. Go back and watch part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4 to put it all together. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at paulabernathy.com. I'll answer any questions on anything. Manny Sanchez. All right, Manny. Manny Sanchez. You're in the spin. Let's see what we got for you. Thank you for joining us. Also, Manny, my one and only Facebook. There's a couple of you there. If you're over on TikTok, you gotta come over. Hashtag win. All right, Manny, Fast Tracks Tube for 12 months. If you already have that, then we can give you another year, or you can spin again, or whatnot. That's totally up to you. Let me know if you're here. If not, we got you down for Fast Tracks Tube, and we can always add an additional year to it. Or you can pick somebody out in the group you want, you can gift it to them. Maybe everybody in the group, if you already have it, Manny, then basically what you can do is all of you say, I want it real quickly, and Manny can pick one of you. Everything. Christopher, dude, you got to wait. Okay. Impatient. And you may not win, Christopher. I'm just saying. No guarantees, bro. I don't make that. All right. Larry Wilson, second. Larry, thank you for joining us today, Larry. I didn't see you in here. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us. So let's see what Larry is going to get here. If he's going to get in the drawing or whatever, that type of thing. Christopher said, come on. Dude, it's almost here. It's getting here. Taxes are due April 15th. That's coming too. I can't do anything about that date. I'm just saying. All right, Larry, you get 12 months of access to Fast Tracks Tube, our exclusive video platform. All you got to do is go to fasttrackstube.com. That's FASTTRAXTUBE.com. Go where it says member plans, sign up for a free membership, and then we will elevate you up to and you'll get 12 months of access to our video platform. And you can go over and watch the D-Rating Demystified video. And you can also watch our 8-hour calculations video. Wow, if that won't keep you awake at night, right? Okay. All right, let's do another one here real quick, kind of catch up here. Let's see. Got to make sure I write that down, otherwise I'll forget. All right. Charles says it's rigged. Larry's watching over on our Fast Tracks Tube, so he knows what that's all about. Larry, you already a member of Fast Tracks Tube? We just watch it, there. Adam French. Adam French is a good guy. And so hopefully he'll win something good here, Adam. Let's see here. Let's go. What else we got to get this for Adam? All right, Adam, let's see what you get. All right, Adam, you're in for the ultimate coin. Ultimate decision coin. So you're in that drawing will take place for that. All right. All right, let's do another one. I'm in the giveaway mood here. Let's go. I'm in the giveaway mood. Not in the mood to give away the hybrid software, Christopher, yet. But I am in the giving mood. I already saw your fingers going. Oh, are you getting it? All right, Rob Nickman. All right, Rob. Let's see here. Let's see what you get, Rob. Let's go on and spin the wheel for you. A good mix of people today, all over the place. Hold on, Nepo. I will answer that question before we leave. All right, Rob, you get 12 months of Fast Tracks Tube. I don't know if you already have it. You can let me know what you'd like to do with it. If you already have it, we can spin again for you. Otherwise, I'll put you down for it. I didn't hear back from Manny, so Manny must have bolted out. So let's get back here and get to the main. All right. Richard won. I know you won it, Richard, but it seems like Manny's not willing to give it away. So I haven't seen him in here. So, all right, let's end up on this question. We won't look at the hog today because I am going over. So Nepo says, what states is stuck on the 23? There's quite a few that are currently still in the 2020. I don't know if I'd say stuck because there's plenty of states. Well, there's a few states that are still on the 2017, believe it or not. And I heard yesterday that DC, for example, District of Columbia, is still testing using the 2011 NEC, dude. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, it's just one of those things that, it's. I wish that the states would get there quicker. I wish they would all be like Texas and immediately adopt it once it's out, knowing that the jurisdictions can be a little bit lesser, but they still, at the end of the day, you still have to meet the state if you get in trouble. So you might have like a city in Texas that stays on the 2020, in the states on the 2023. So the electrician working in that city has to follow the 2020, but they have to be very keen about the 2023 because if something happens and somebody gets hurt, guess who's going to come after them? The state, not the locality. Okay. All right, Rob, we'll give it. You want to give it to Richard? Richard says, I want it. You want to gift it to Richard? Rob and Richard, y'all work it out. You want me to gift it to you? I'll gift it to Richard. So at the end of the day, if somebody does something to a lesser standard, it's okay by the jurisdiction. But now the state's on a higher level. If something happens and the state steps in, they're not going to care that you did it to the 2020. They're going to say, we don't care. We're on the 2023. So that kind of puts the electrician in a bit of a quandary. You know what I'm saying? So I always say do it to the latest edition, and always make sure you meet the 2020, but also make sure that if there's some unique aspect of it that's the 2023, make sure you meet whatever the edition is that's being adopted by the state. Okay, it just kind of protects you. In your situation, Ipo, it's just the bureaucracy that takes place. Okay, it's just the bureaucracy that takes place in code adoption, unfortunately, and it sucks. But it is what it is. Rob says, give it to Richard. So Richard, where you at? Richard, right here. Richard Geiger says, I want it. So thank Rob for that gift. Richard, just go to fasttrackstube.com, go up on the membership area, sign up for a free membership, and we will see it. But also drop us an email. Any of our emails will work on any of our sites. Just drop us one. Go to the contact us area, whatever. Just drop us a note. Let us know. We'll verify everything, and we will elevate you to the annual membership. And at the end of the year, hopefully you'll renew it because you find it of great value. That type of thing. Okay, so there we go. Let's see here. What else we got? All right. So anyway, so I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Miles says that he's taking both books, 2020 and 2023, to the test to see which one they let you go in with. Yeah, I mean, again, the question also, and I think we had, what is this here real quick? It said, Nepo, I just tested in PA, which is under the 2020. I used the 2023 and the 2020 code books. I was faster with the 23, but had questions where the wording was 2020. And that is the struggle. And people ask me all the time, say, can I take the exam if it's a 2023 based exam? Can I take the exam using a 2020? Chances are you might have a better chance of passing between the 20 and 2023 than you would between, let's say, the 2017 and you try to use a 2017 and you're testing on the 2023. It's too big of a gap there, right? Too many codes have moved around, too many things. But is it possible? Yeah, because you're still learning how to navigate the NEC. So again, you're not going to memorize everything in a code book. So you still have the skills. So there's still a high probability. I just like to tell students my best advice, and again, I got to be very diligent in how I do this. If you're studying for the 2023, and you're taking a 2023, study with the 2023. If you're taking a 2020, study with the 2020. If you're thinking, well, I already have a 2020, but I'm going to do 2020, I don't want to put the money in a new code book. Stop it. Stop it. $125 or whatever it is for a code book, $140 is not the end of the world. And you should always have the latest edition of the NEC handy. I'm just saying, it's an investment in your career. So don't make it a money thing. That would be petty, in my opinion, when it comes to things like that. Okay. I'm just saying, just my opinion on that. All right. All right, everybody. We gave away some good stuff today. We got some folks on the list. Again, join me Monday, where I will be talking specifically Monday about the hog, but I'm really talking about AI in general and how artificial intelligence will help you. Somebody says that Tennessee is still on the 2017. Yep, some states are still lagging behind. And we got about another year and maybe a year and before the 2026 will be out, right? So again, usually in this year, some of those 2017s will jump up to the 2020. My hope would be if I could have that one little wish that, ooh, I wish. Of course, I'd wish for other stuff. But if I had to wish about codes, I would wish that all states would immediately adopt the latest published edition. Make my life so much easier. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, keep studying. It doesn't matter. I don't think it's going to mess you up too much, Nepo. I just keep studying the process. Follow the 3-wave method when you get in there. Focus on being able to navigate through the code. Understand there will be some subtle changes, but at the end of the day, focus. Yeah. Some people say that there are some areas in the country that are, believe it or not, are still on the 2008 code. Incredible. Bureaucracy is what it is. Bunch of BS from your administrators. They're too lazy, or they don't want to move forward, or they are. All it takes is a major disaster in that area for them to go point fingers and go, see, you weren't on the latest codes. People got hurt. Okay. Call them out. Go to your city council meetings. Get involved. Go to your state meetings. Harass them. Let them know they need to be on the latest edition. You got to be a part of it. You know what I'm saying? All right. Hey, guys, everybody, I appreciate you. Thank you all for joining me today. It's always blessed to have you here. I enjoy coming to you every morning with my cup of coffee so we can have a conversation. I love the discussions. It's not always about code, but that's kind of the centric thing about our show is talk about codes. But on Monday, join me for a great AI experience. We're going to talk about how AI is going to change the construction industry. And we're going to show you how TradeHound can do that as well. And we will look at some code questions because we're going to test the hog. So that is Monday's episode. So look forward to that. Until next time, folks, stay safe. God bless and catch you on the other side.